This week, 9 individuals, including well-known musical artists, kidnapped and robbed at gunpoint numerous victims at a music studio in Dallas, Texas. 8 of the 9 were arrested yesterday in Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville.
Pusha did all that time in jail, in the feds. He around people that have unbelievable cases where it show how far the feds willing to go. Pusha came home, y'all, and made the first day out, they sent him right back to jail. That young nigga came home, bro, and did NBA Youngboy numbers. First song he put out, they said he was gonna flop. That young nigga went to the top. He had all the cars, the lifestyle, everything he dreamed of having. But he didn't change his mindset.
This is Pooh Shiesty, 26 years old, one of the biggest rappers to come out of Memphis in years. He already did federal time, came home, dropped a record that went top 15 on the Billboard chart, and then, while still wearing a government ankle monitor on his leg, he allegedly walked into a recording studio in Dallas and put a gun to his own label boss's head. But the craziest part of all of this is not even the gun. It is what he was trying to force that man to sign at gunpoint. Before we get into what actually went down inside that studio, you need to understand who these people are and where they came from. Because this story did not start on January 10th of 2026. It started decades earlier in one of the roughest parts of Memphis, Tennessee. Lontrell Donnell Williams Jr., better known to the world as Pooh Shiesty, was born on November 8, 1999. He grew up in the Cane Creek Apartments in South Memphis, which is a neighborhood where money is short and the streets are always close. His father, Lontrell Williams Sr., known around Memphis as Mob Boss, was a local rapper who founded his own record label called Mob Ties Records. The man had a street reputation that everybody in that city knew about. By the time Pooh was around 4 years old, his father was already in serious trouble with the law, charged as an accessory after the fact in a murder case in 2004. He went in and out of the system throughout the years when his son needed him most, so Pooh Shiesty basically grew up watching all of that from the sideline. His mother, Gladys Baines, who the internet knows as Mama Shiesty, was the one who held everything together at home. His older brother, Terrence Henderson, who rapped under the name T.P., was the one who actually gave him the name Pooh Shiesty. He took his little brother's childhood nickname, Mr. Pooh, and combined it with the word shiesty, which is street slang that basically means someone who is sneaky and not to be trusted. When you look at what allegedly happened in that Dallas studio, the irony of that name is hard to ignore. Terrence passed away from brain cancer in early 2021, right when Pooh's career was moving the fastest. A few years later, Pooh also lost his cousin, Big Scar, the rapper Alexander Woods, in 2022. So this is somebody who grew up watching the streets take people, then watched the music industry give him a way out, and still could not seem to stay away from the same world that cost everyone around him. On the music side, Pooh came up through the Memphis trap scene as part of a crew called Choppa Gang alongside his close friend Rodney Wright Jr., who the rap world knows as Big 30. By 2018 and 2019, he was putting out records like Hell Night and Shiesty Summer and building a name for himself regionally. And then in 2020, Gucci Mane saw him on Instagram and signed him to the new 1017 Records, which is Gucci's label through Atlantic Records. That was the moment the door opened all the way. His debut tape, Shiesty Season, dropped on February 5, 2021, and entered the Billboard 200 at number 3 in its very first week. His collaboration with Lil Durk, called Back in Blood, peaked at number 13 on the Hot 100 and went 8 times platinum. He landed on XXL's 2021 freshman class. In 1 year, Pooh Shiesty went from a local Memphis artist to one of the most talked about new rappers in the whole country, and Gucci Mane was right there next to him, invested in everything he was building. And then, before the year was even over, it all fell apart. In June of 2021, while his career was still hot, Pooh Shiesty was arrested in Miami on federal charges connected to 3 separate incidents. The first was a July 2020 shooting at a Memphis gas station where he was inside a car when someone in that car opened fire. The second, and the most serious one, happened in October 2020 at the Landon Hotel in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, where prosecutors said his crew showed up to buy marijuana, codeine, and sneakers. The whole thing turned violent, with 2 people getting shot during what the government called an armed robbery.
Broad daylight bullets, 2 hit, over $500,000 in exotic cars. All of it on surveillance video obtained exclusively by 7 News from October in ultra-quiet Bay Harbor Islands. And it involves a recording artist, Pooh Shiesty, except unlike this clip, what happened here was no music video. The footage shows a McLaren sports car, Mercedes Maybach, and another Mercedes pull into this East Bay Harbor Drive condo parking lot. Men from the vehicles eventually get out and meet, and then this. The man in the white shirt has a pistol. The man in the black sweatshirt has a longer gun, and at about the same time, they begin firing before retreating back to the Maybach. The fancy getaway cars speed off, and one of 2 victims then hobbles to the car.
Skyforce 836.
The victims ended up at Aventura Hospital with injuries. But back to the scene for a moment. Police say the famous rapper was in that McLaren. Police and prosecutors say Pooh Shiesty was part of the group that ended up in this parking lot that October afternoon where the shots flew, and it happened right across the street from the police department and town hall here in Bay Harbor Islands, and days before an arrest.
The town of Bay Harbor Islands says you're wanted for aggravated battery with a deadly weapon.
He's also charged with armed robbery. Bay Harbor Police names 1 other for aggravated battery in their affidavit, saying the 2 left the state in a private jet. Police also using these Instagram photos, showing Shiesty with an assault-style rifle and cash as part of their case. They say the shooting came as one of the victims tried selling high-end sneakers and marijuana.
Pooh's defense attorney, Bradford Cohen, would later argue in court that a man who showed up in a rented lime green McLaren carrying over $40,000 cash had absolutely no reason to rob anybody over a few $100s worth of codeine. The third incident was in May 2021 at a Miami strip club called King of Diamonds, where prosecutors said Pooh pulled out a gun and shot a security guard in the ankle after money got knocked out of his pocket in the crowd. On January 4, 2022, Pooh Shiesty pleaded guilty to 1 federal charge, conspiracy to possess firearms in connection with violent crimes and drug trafficking. 3 other charges were dropped as part of the deal, including one that could have put him away for life. Federal Judge K. Michael Moore sentenced him to 63 months in prison, which is 5 years and 3 months, followed by 3 years of supervised release afterwards. His attorney thought hard and managed to get the sentence below what the government was pushing for, but 63 months is still a long time to be away when your career is at its peak. He did the majority of his time at a federal prison in Pennsylvania called USP Cannon, and on October 6, 2025, he got out 6 months early because of good behavior. Gucci Mane posted on Instagram welcoming him home. Pooh dropped FTO, which stands for First Day Out, and that song reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100, which was the highest he had ever charted on a solo lead. It looked, for a minute, like the man was really going to take advantage of his second chance. But here's what a lot of people missed in all the celebration of him coming home. He was not free. He walked out of that prison and straight into 3 years of federal supervised release with an ankle monitor on his leg, with conditions that clearly stated he could not commit any new crimes and could not touch a gun. His supervision was not set to end until April of 2026, so all those videos of him out celebrating, all those posts of him living large in late 2025 and early 2026, that ankle monitor was there for all of it. And that monitor is going to become the most important piece of evidence in the whole story when we get to what allegedly happened on January 10th. By the time Pooh Shiesty came home from prison, his label situation with Gucci Mane's 1017 records had been quietly shifting in the background. In late 2024, Gucci Mane announced publicly that he was cutting most of his roster loose after looking at his numbers and deciding the label was losing too much money on too many artists. But Pooh Shiesty was one of the very few he held on to. Gucci had made a deliberate decision to keep him because he genuinely believed Pooh was a moneymaker and that together they still had something to build. When Pooh came home from prison, that excitement was real on Gucci's end. Behind the scenes, though, according to the federal criminal complaint filed in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas, Pooh Shiesty was not satisfied with the contract he was locked into and wanted out of his deal with 1017. Now, any reasonable person in that situation would get a music lawyer on the phone and handle it through the proper channels. That is what contracts are for, and that is what courts exist for. But the route Pooh Shiesty allegedly chose was something completely different. He set up a meeting with Gucci Mane in Dallas, Texas, telling him it was to talk business and sort out the contract situation, and then he organized a crew of 9 people, including his own father, to come with him.
The complaint alleges that on January 10th of this year, 3 music industry professionals traveled to Dallas for a scheduled business meeting. Lontrell Williams Jr. arranged this meeting purportedly to discuss the terms of his recording contract with one of the victims. As alleged, once these 3 men were inside the recording studio, Williams Jr. and 8 co-conspirators, several of whom traveled from Memphis, Tennessee, executed a coordinated armed takeover. As alleged, Williams Jr. produced an AK-style pistol and forced one of the victims to sign a release from the recording contract at gunpoint.
According to the 32-page FBI affidavit that was filed on March 30th, 2026 and later unsealed after the arrests, here is exactly how January 10th played out. On that day, Gucci Mane and 2 of his associates flew into Dallas thinking they were headed to a normal business meeting. They brought 2 security people with them. They showed up at the recording studio, which was inside an office building on Dallas Parkway, around 1:45 in the afternoon, and when they got there, the studio was still closed, so they walked over to a nearby store, grabbed some liquor in red cups, and came back to wait. Everything about that afternoon still felt normal at that point. What Gucci and his people did not know was that earlier that same day, before the studio was even open, Pooh Shiesty's father, Lontrell Williams Sr., had pulled up to a Staples store in Frisco, Texas, walked straight to the copy machines, and at 1:59 in the afternoon printed some documents at the printer. Investigators believe what he printed that afternoon was the contract release paperwork that his son was about to try to force Gucci Mane to sign under the threat of a gun. Williams Sr. had also been calling the studio owner repeatedly throughout the day to make sure the session got booked, telling him it was for Pooh and Gucci to get in and record music together. The studio opened at around 3:15 and Gucci's group got settled inside the control room and started watching a football game while they waited. At 3:43, surveillance cameras at the office building caught Pooh Shiesty, his father, Big 30, and 6 other men walking in through the east side entrance, 9 people total. One of them, a man later identified as Demarion Gibson, stepped back outside briefly and came back in with a bag over his shoulder. Up in the control room, Gucci and his team had no idea what was walking through that door. What happened next, according to the affidavit, is that Gucci's people could hear Pooh in the lobby area on the phone, and from what they could make out, his caseworker was on the other end telling him that he was not cleared to be outside and that he needed to go straight home because his ankle monitor showed him out of bounds. Pooh told the caseworker he would head back, but then turned around and asked Gucci if they could just step into the recording room privately for a quick conversation. Gucci agreed. So Gucci walked into the attached recording room with Pooh, Pooh's father, and Big 30. His 2 associates, referred to in the complaint as MM and BP, stayed back in the control room with the other 6 men. They were still sharing drinks and watching the game. They did not know yet that those 6 men were carrying. Once they were in the recording room, Pooh Shiesty pulled the paperwork out of a bag and put it in front of Gucci and told him to sign it and give up the contract. Gucci said no. The 2 of them started arguing, and one of Gucci's associates in the control room could see through to the recording room and notice the conversation getting heated, so he sent a text to the head of security. Then, Pooh Shiesty told Big 30 to go get the bag. Big 30 walked out, came back, and Pooh reached in and pulled out what looked like a black AK-style pistol and pointed it straight at Gucci Mane's head. With a gun on him, Gucci Mane signed the contract release paper. Big 30 then pulled out his phone and recorded Gucci on video saying out loud that he was releasing Pooh Shiesty from the contract. Pooh's father was standing in that room going over the document, and when he noticed no date was on it, he told his son to make Gucci add one. Pooh made him add the date. Then Pooh took Gucci's wedding ring off his finger, took his watch, earrings, and cash. Back in the control room, the 6 other men had already pulled out their weapons, and the situation had turned into a full-on robbery. One of Gucci's associates was thrown onto a couch, his pockets were searched, and his wallet and jewelry were taken from him. The other associate was grabbed from behind and choked hard enough that he nearly blacked out, and the scratches left on his neck and wrist were bad enough that Dallas police photographed them later as evidence. His Rolex watch and a Louis Vuitton bag full of other expensive watches, AirPods, and a wallet were stripped from him at gunpoint. Big 30 had also positioned himself against the studio door to physically block Gucci's security from getting through. The security team had their own guns out and managed to crack the door open slightly, but they were outnumbered and could not push their way in. When it was done, Pooh Shiesty pressed the barrel of the gun against the back of one of the associates' heads and told Gucci's people to walk out through the west entrance of the building. The crew left through the east side.
Also tonight, a very dramatic story. You gotta listen to this one. Justice Department is laying out some details about this crime involving some big-name rappers, Gucci Mane, and 2 other industry pros who were apparently kidnapped and robbed, according to the Justice Department, by Pooh Shiesty, by Big 30, along with some others. A total of 9 suspects have been arrested. So here's what we know. These DOJ officials say Gucci Mane was lured into what was a fake business meeting in Dallas at a music studio that turned into what they called an armed takeover, where Mane and these others were held at gunpoint. This is back in January. They got robbed of their Rolexes, their cash, their jewelry. At one point, Gucci Mane was even basically forced to sign a release from a record label. Priscilla Thompson is joining us now. It is wild stuff, Priscilla. What else happened?
Yeah, Hallie, unbelievable, made for the movies kind of stuff. So Pooh Shiesty is signed to Gucci Mane's record label. And so this business meeting was scheduled in January at a recording studio in Dallas, and Pooh Shiesty shows up with 8 other people. You mentioned Big 30, also his father was among those with him, and Gucci Mane shows up with 2 people. They're all in this recording studio together. Pooh Shiesty says to Gucci Mane, "Can we speak privately?" And he allegedly, according to this complaint, asked Gucci Mane to sign a release form that would release Pooh Shiesty from the record deal. Gucci Mane declined. They argue back and forth. Pooh Shiesty asks someone to bring him a bag and pulls out an AK-style pistol, according to this complaint, and demands that Gucci Mane sign this document releasing him from the recording deal. After that document is signed, then he goes on, Pooh Shiesty, to steal Gucci Mane's wedding ring, other jewelry, his wallet, and then the small group of individuals goes back out into the larger group that's in that recording studio, and apparently all 8 of the other men who were with Pooh Shiesty pull out guns and began demanding property from Gucci Mane and the men who were with them. So we're talking about Louis Vuitton bags, Rolexes, cash, wallets. There's even physical altercations where there are photos of people with scratches. At one point, the complaint says that there was a man who had a gun put to his head, and they believed that they were all going to be executed. But they were allowed to leave eventually, and then this investigation took place where you have...
Exterior surveillance picked up a white Buick Enclave, a black Dodge Charger Hellcat, and a black Dodge Ram rolling north shortly after 4:48 in the afternoon. Phone data placed the whole group at the Star in Frisco, Texas by 5:07 that evening, and they stayed out there until around 9:30 that night, probably feeling like they had pulled something off. They had not. Gucci Mane and his people knew exactly who had just robbed them, and they called the feds. They knew Pooh personally, and every single one of them gave investigators everything they had, and the feds got to work. The evidence the government had put together against Pooh Shiesty and the rest of the crew was not a thin case built on 1 or 2 things. It was stacked from multiple directions, and a lot of the most damaging parts came directly from the suspects themselves. The first thing was the ankle monitor. Pooh Shiesty's own court-ordered GPS monitor placed him at that Dallas studio at the exact time the robbery was happening, which on its own was already a direct violation of his home confinement conditions. His caseworker literally called him during the robbery and told him to go home. He agreed and stayed anyway. That data was sitting in a government system the whole time, time-stamped and ready to be pulled.
Electronic monitoring data placing Williams Jr. at the offense location.
Oh my God. They basically said they had the ankle monitor on at the robbery. Yo, you might as well just FaceTime the feds, bro. Yo, hey, I'm robbing this bank right now. Not right now, I'm robbing right now. What you mean? What you mean I won't do it? Got my pole up. What you mean I won't? Yo, you FBI. Yo, this is crazy. Wearing the ankle monitor to the crime is wow. Like, you know what I mean? This is lit. Yo, I wonder which genius thought of this plan.
On top of that, cell phone records and license plate reader cameras showed multiple people in that crew traveling together from Memphis to Dallas in the days leading up to January 10th, which proved the whole thing was planned in advance and not some random situation. Rental car records showed that Lontrell Williams Sr. personally booked the white Buick Enclave through Hertz that the group used. Surveillance footage was pulled from the studio building itself, the Staples where investigators believe the contract papers were printed, the Comfort Inn where several of the crew stayed after the robbery, and other businesses nearby. Fingerprints lifted from the red Solo cups that the suspects shared drinks from in the control room were run through the fingerprint database and came back matching Damarian Gibson and Terrence Rogers, putting them inside that room with the victims. Then, the AirTags came into play. One of the victims had small Apple AirTag tracking devices hidden inside his Louis Vuitton bag, his AirPods case, and his wallet. After the robbery, the signal from the bag and the AirPods was pinging near the Dallas North Tollway heading south, which lined up perfectly with the route the crew took when they drove away from the studio. The wallet's tracker showed up in a parking lot right next to both Lontrell Williams Sr.'s apartment building and the Star in Frisco, the exact place the whole group went after leaving the scene. And then, while the feds were quietly building all of this, some of the crew decided to celebrate on social media. Demarcus Glover posted an Instagram story the very next morning, January 11th at 9:13 in the morning, showing a big stack of cash and what appeared to be a Rolex tagged in Dallas. Later that same day, he posted a video alongside what looked like Rogers and Gibson, all of them showing off money and a watch. On January 17th, Glover was on his story wearing a Rolex that investigators said looked exactly like the one stolen from the victim, captioning it like he had just copped something new. On January 19th, he was rocking a necklace with a 1017 pendant, which matched the exact chain that had been snatched from one of the victims' necks inside that studio. Terrence Rogers posted a video on January 15th of himself wearing what appeared to be a Batman Rolex, a specific Rolex GMT Master 2 that the victim had a receipt and the serial number for. On top of all of that, Greyhound bus records confirmed that Demarcus Glover, Rogers, Gibson, and Darian McDaniel all took a bus from Dallas back to Memphis together the very next day, January 11th, with the stolen goods still fresh. The FBI, working with the FBI Dallas Violent Crimes Task Force, the Memphis Safe Task Force, the Nashville Field Office, and the Dallas Police Department, spent the months after January pulling everything together into a complete case. On March 30th, 2026, Special Agent Brittany Garcia signed a 32-page affidavit with all of it laid out, and the complaint was filed with the court under seal. On April 1st, 2026, the arrests began.
Hours before we saw these agents taking pictures and searching vehicles at this Cordova home, neighbors say they were awakened by the sound of flashbangs around 5:30 a.m.
Heard these couple of loud booms, so I came outside and, I heard them say, come out with your hands up, we've got a warrant.
According to the Shelby County Assessor's Office website, the home is registered to Lontrell Williams, the father of Memphis rapper Lontrell Williams Jr., also known as Pooh Shiesty. Neighbors say they saw agents detaining at least 2 people who came out of the home.
The explosions were louder than a shotgun.
Fox 13 saw FBI and TBI agents searching 5 vehicles in the garage and driveway, taking pictures and tagging evidence. Neighbors say this type of attention is the last thing their community needs.
It was just kind of surreal, because obviously there was a law enforcement action taking place.
The FBI didn't release any other information about what happened.
Early that morning at around 5:30, FBI and Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents hit the Williams family home at Beaver Valley Lane in Cordova, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Memphis. Neighbors said they woke up to the sound of flashbangs going off as agents made entry. People living nearby watched federal agents spend hours carrying boxes and computer equipment out of the house. Lontrell Williams Sr. was arrested there at the Cordova home. Pooh Shiesty was arrested separately in Dallas. Big 30 was picked up in Nashville. By the end of that same day, 8 of the 9 defendants were already in custody across 3 different cities. The next day, April 2nd, the U.S. Attorney for the northern part of Texas held a press conference and laid the whole case out publicly. The complaint was unsealed. One defendant, Terrence Rogers, was still out at that point, with agents tracking him toward Georgia. The U.S. Attorney said they would find him. All 9 people named in the complaint are charged with conspiracy to commit federal kidnapping, which under federal law carries a sentence of anywhere from 0 years all the way up to life in prison. The actual sentence will come down to each person's prior record and exactly what role they played, but for Pooh Shiesty, the fact that he allegedly did all of this while already on federal supervised release from a previous conviction is a very serious problem. That is what prosecutors call an aggravating factor, and it is the kind of thing that makes a judge look at a person very differently at sentencing. As of now, no trial date had been set, and all defendants are still presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. The rap world reacted loudly once the news broke. Wack 100 went on DJ Academic's stream and claimed he had federal paperwork from 2009 allegedly showing that Lontrell Williams Sr. had worked as a government informant years ago, and he tried to extend that claim to Pooh himself. Pooh's attorney, Brodford Cohen, has denied any cooperation by Pooh in every single case he has ever handled for him, and a lot of people online pointed out the obvious problem with Wack's theory, which is that if the father and son had both been informants for years, it was very hard to explain why the FBI just kicked their door in with flashbangs and arrested them both on federal kidnapping charges. No mainstream news outlet has been able to verify what Wack showed on stream, and none of it appears in any of the official court documents.
Pooh Shiesty did all that time in jail, in the feds. He around people that have unbelievable cases where it show how far the feds willing to go. Pooh Shiesty came home, y'all, and made the first day out, they sent him right back to jail. Pride and ego is our main enemy.
There was also a whole conversation online about whether Gucci Mane cooperated with investigators, with people throwing the word snitching around in a way that's worth addressing directly. Gucci Mane was the victim in this case. He had a gun pointed at his head and was forced to sign a legal document under threat of being shot. His wedding ring was taken off his finger. When somebody robs you like that and you tell the police, that is called being a witness to a crime committed against you, not snitching. And the fact that this even became a debate says a lot about where some of these conversations in rap culture end up going. A man called Woody put it more plainly than most.
Man, we ain't gotta fake an image no more. We did what these wish they can do. We ain't gotta keep doing it. That's why I say these play the game till they lose. You gotta know when to get out of it, bro. You gotta know when to say, okay, this is it. Because they all love you, they gas you on. And when they're putting handcuffs on you, and you come to the realization that this shit is real, now y'all wonder why Woody walk the way he walk and talk the way he talk. The feds are real. That cemetery with all them bodies in there is real. This ain't Grand Theft Auto. This ain't no TV show. This our real lives. And y'all wonder why these white people don't want to see us with no money. Because we do stupid shit with it. You had no business doing that. You folks came out here and led by example. God bless the rest of y'all.
What makes this whole story so hard to sit with is how unnecessary it all was.
And you know, this entire situation, it actually made me think of the Pooh Shiesty interview that he did with Double XL when he first got out, right? Remember, he dropped the first day out song, FDO. Then he went on like a little promo run, and one of those was an interview with Double XL. And it made me think about in that interview when Pooh Shiesty was talking about Gucci Mane kind of mentoring him about growing from the experience, right? And I think just in retrospect, knowing what happened, knowing what Pooh Shiesty did, knowing he's been arrested, hearing Gucci Mane respond the way that he responded, it just made me think of that Pooh Shiesty interview, because the irony of it is just wild.
The way Gucci came home and like, they motivated me too, because like, you know, I took notes from there, like how he switched it up, how he toned up, you know, got fit, got his mind healthy, like took notes in there every way, so they motivated me to move how I'm moving like toward today too, so. Like, he showed that it can be done. Like, all you got to do is want it. You got sobered up. You know what I'm saying? We got a lot of the similar traits, because I realized that he woke up when he was in there. You know what I'm saying? Like, he really woke up, and he wasn't just in there playing or, you know, not taking it serious. Another thing he told me, too, was like, Shiesty, you 20 years old going to go see what I saw at 35 years old. You know? You got a head start as long as you got this out the way first, you know. Fortunately, it had to happen, but it happened, bro. It is what it is. So you got to get this out the way early. You know what I'm saying? It could have been too late for me if I wouldn't ever came out and played it right. So take advantage of that too, you know what I'm saying? So that stuck with me.
Pooh Shiesty had been to federal prison and made it back. Somewhere between October 2025 and January 2026, something shifted, and he allegedly threw all of that away, along with his freedom and his father's freedom and his closest friend's freedom, over a contract dispute that any music attorney could have filed paperwork on. Do you think Pooh Shiesty will be locked away for life this time? Let me know in the comments section. Also, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.